And on that note, welcome back to Full Flavor MTG. Today, in our inaugural episode, I'm going to dive into a great, heavily themed deck list curated around those same Merfolk. Here at Full Flavor, my goal is to build and share EDH decks that aren't just synergistic and optimized, but are also completely dedicated to their theme. Leading our adventurous and brave tribe of Merfolk explorers is Hakbal of the Surging Soul. He's a 3/3 Merfolk scout for 2, a green, and a blue, and he says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, each Merfolk creature you control explores. As well as, whenever Hakbal of the Surging Soul attacks, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't, draw a card. Our game plan here is to recruit Merfolk that are evasive or have strong effects of their own, help them explore until they're huge threats, and send them at our enemies like a crashing wave of humanoid fish destruction. Before we get into the specifics, let's look at some of this deck's stats. As a rule, I plan for 10 pieces of ramp, 10 pieces of draw, and 10 pieces of interaction with plenty of flexibility based on a deck's needs. In this deck, we're looking at 8 pieces of ramp, not counting Hakbal, 11 pieces of draw, and 12 dedicated pieces of removal. Beyond those essentials, the deck is currently running 2 additional Merfolk that synergize especially well with all our +1 counters, 1 Merfolk with an identity crisis, 17 pieces that either are evasive or grant evasion, 35 lands, 1 Merfolk-friendly elemental that helps give us some longevity by way of life gain, 5 protection pieces, 2 pieces of under-the-sea top-deck manipulation, 2 Merfolk token generators to grow our fish-friendly family, and 1 piece of recursion, which I think is currently our biggest weakness by far, since we'll likely be dumping a lot of cards into our graveyard. Anyway, let's get to chewing on some seaweed and start with the ramp. We're using a few classics, a suite of untappers, 1 dork I bet you didn't know existed, and 2 high synergy pieces to accelerate our mana. Up first are our 2 classics. We have Cultivate, which received appropriate art for this deck just in time, and is going to ramp us 1 land and ensure we hit our next land drop no matter what. And we have High Tide. We're already heavier on islands for the sake of one of my favorite little board wipes of all time, and because our deck leans heavily toward blue, so this 1-turn island doubler can help us have a tsunami of a turn. Next, let's look at our untappers. They're not the most efficient, but they're Merfolk, and that's what we're putting first. We have Forensic Researcher, Kiora's follower, Merfolk Sky Scout, who also happens to be a good evasive body that can deal a lot of damage after exploring a few times, and Marrow Regery, which is also a lord for our Merfolk. Then, we have our 1 Merfolk Mana Dork, Sea Scryer. This old-school Queen of the Reefs can tap for 1 colorless mana, or filter a colorless into a blue if we so choose. And finally, we have our 2 massively synergistic Merfolk ramp pieces. Up first, of course, is our commander. Hakbal's second ability says whenever Hakbal of the Surging Soul attacks, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't, draw a card. Not only does that take all of the lands we're exploring into our hands and put them into play, but if we've somehow run out, it still draws us a card anyway. And second, we have Nikanzil, Current Conductor, whose first ability says whenever a creature you control explores a land card, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. We're going to be exploring lots of land cards to our hand as we flood the board with fishpeople, so this can give us a ton of mana. Now, let's put the Merfolk's Atlantean knowledge to use and go over all of the draw engines that will put some wind in our sails and propel the deck forward. Of course, there's our commander again. The Explore mechanic itself that Hakbal gives to all of our Merfolk can draw an absurd amount of cards, and his second ability gives us the option to draw instead of ramp when he attacks. Then we have a few Merfolk that draw when they enter the battlefield. Tishana, Voice of Thunder, will draw us a card for each creature we control when she enters, and grant us no maximum hand size, which can be huge in this deck. And Zagana can help us fill our hand whether she's a Prime speaker or a Utopian speaker. Zagana Utopian Speaker will draw us 1 card when she enters, and grants trample to every one of our creatures with a +1 counter on it, and Prime Speaker Zagana will enter, see the biggest creature we have, and we're throwing enough +1 counters around that there will likely be something very big, and draw us cards equal to that creature's power +1. Up next, we have some looters and some attack or damage triggers that'll make sure we're discarding to hand size at the end of each turn, unless we have Tishana out, that is. Before we look at these, I do want to make an important rules point though. I originally put the looters in because I wanted to have the chance to reset the top card of the library between explores in case something I didn't want to bin showed up on top. However, that's not how this works. Because Hakbal has each Merfolk explore as the resolution of a single ability, nothing else can be added to the stack or resolved from the stack until each and every Merfolk has done its exploring, therefore completing the resolution of Hakbal's single ability. To be able to interact the way I had planned, Hakbal would need to be worded something like, each Merfolk you control has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, this creature explores. That being said, let's get back to our card draw. In the Looters category, we have Merfolk Looter and Raving Visionary. Notably, Raving Visionary can also provide pure card advantage if we have 4 or more card types represented in our graveyard. In the attack and damage trigger categories, we have Seafloor Oracle, Sviolin of Sea and Sky, Cold-Eyed Selkie, and Curiosity. Floracle nabs us a card whenever one of our Merfolk does combat damage to a player. Sviolin draws us a card every turn when she attacks and is going to be indestructible almost all the time, and she even offers some protection by giving our Merfolk Ward. Selkie is going to be drawing cards a handful at a time after she gets buffed by exploring a few times as long as an opponent has an island, and Curiosity, which has got to be one of the coolest pieces of art in this deck, will bank us a card every turn when combined with one of our Evasive Sea Dwellers. And last but not least, we have 2 very flavorful spells that'll help us smooth things out and keep our hand full. Chart a Course will always draw us 2 and will almost never be used in a situation where we have to discard, since the deck is both evasive and aggressive, and Fathom Trawl helps offset all the lands we're putting into our hand by ensuring we draw 3 non-land cards. Now, let's examine the powers of the sea that represent the removal in our deck. Our Maelstrom is made up of 3 single target bounce effects, 3 counterspell effects, 2 theft effects, and 4 cards that will summon from the depths to clear the board. Crashing Tide bounces 1 creature and will almost always be available to us at instant speed. Harbinger of the Tides is a Merfolk that can send a tapped creature back to your opponent's hand at instant or sorcery speed, and Razorfin Abolisher can bounce a buffed up creature or save one of our Merfolk from an incoming piece of removal. Mystical Dispute imposes a decent tax to counter a spell, can cost as little as 1 mana, and is just about a perfect depiction of how I hope our opponents feel as we explore them to death with Fishpeople. Vodalian Hexcatcher is not only a lord to our Merfolk, but will also have our opponents second guessing and recounting both our Merfolk and their mana before committing to their biggest and most impactful spells. And, as if that wasn't enough, it comes with Flash, which means we can keep it as a trick up our sleeve for the first activation, and then leave it on the field as a deterrent after. And finally, my favorite card in the deck, the Fishbender himself, the Merfolk who's a man and a fish, not a man and a fish, Vodalian Mage. There are other, more normal looking arts for this, but I can't ever imagine using them. This card is hilarious, fits the flavor still, and gives us a good little repeatable counterspell to keep our opponents on their toes and hit the tempo of their biggest plays. As much as I'd love to talk about the real fish man all day, let's move on to our theft effects. Thieving Skydiver is an evasive Merfolk that's going to come in, steal our opponent's coolest artifact, and then beat their face in as she soars through the sea breeze. And Sea Singer can tap to steal whatever creature we want for as long as we want, as long as its controller has an island on the board. And finally, we'll trigger our opponent's Thalassophobia by summoning these creatures and spells from the depths to wipe their boards. Filter Out will bounce all non-creature, non-land permanents, which favors us since we're so creature-heavy. River's Rebuke will drag one player's entire board under the waves. Slyn Voda the Rising Deep can be summoned from the darkest depths of the sea to drown even the most jaded and powerful creatures of the air and the earth. And another one of my absolute favorites, Scourge of Fleets, will protect our waters from all kinds of intruders. That's it for the essentials, so let's look at the rest of the deck. Merfolk Skydiver is an evasive threat that can utilize all our extra mana to proliferate the counters on every last one of our Merfolk, and where Skydiver goes wide with its additional counters, Voral of the Whole Clade goes tall, doubling the number of counters on any one of our evasive threats at instant speed. Deep Fathom Echo does some extra exploring, can change its identity to match any one of our non-legendary Merfolk every single turn. Deep Channel Mentor and Herald of Secret Streams are probably the MVPs of the entire deck, since they're going to make our entire board unblockable. And Waterspout Weavers is close behind with the chance to give our entire board flying on any given turn. Ensnare and Tempest Caller trap our opponent's creatures in the current, completely opening the door for unimpeded attacks. Marrow Levitator can grant flying every turn. Merfolk Sovereign is a lord and makes one of our Merfolk unblockable every turn. Adonis Climb adds counters to our Merfolk, then transforms into a land that can grant both buffs and evasion. An Aquatic Incursion comes with 2 more Merfolk Explorers, and can make any number of our Merfolk unblockable for 4 mana each. Shaper Apprentice, Mistway Spy, and Merfolk Windrobber are all flyers and ready to swoop in from the crackling storm clouds to do huge amounts of damage once they've explored a few times. Even better, Triton Shorestalker, River Sneak, Mist-Cloaked Herald, and Grey Harbor Merfolk can't be blocked at all. And finally, chief among our evasive aquatic threats, we have Merfolk Cave Diver, who is unblockable and will be devastatingly powerful very early on in the game. Wildgrowth Walker will keep our life total well above a dangerous level. Dive Down and Vodalian Illusionist protect our most important creatures at instant speed. Blinding Fog is both a pseudo-fog and a mass protection spell. Protective Bubble is both hilarious and effective, as it can provide permanent protection and unblockability to one of our biggest threats, and Kapala Warden of Waves protects all of our Merfolk with Pseudo Ward. Ponder and Retreat to Coral Helm help us rearrange the top of our deck for more effective exploring. Deeproot Pilgrimage and Deeproot Waters help flood our board with even more Merfolk that can help us explore past the edges of the map. Forerunner of the Herald and Marrow Harbinger will let us tutor for our most powerful fishy friends, and Wildest Dreams will give us a chance to dump a lot of mana in order to return a full grip of our best cards from the icy depths of our graveyard back to our hand. In particular, I think this is our most lacking category, but I struggled to find flavorful recursion at hand. Wildest Dreams is already a bit of a stretch, but the swirling patterns in the clouds and foliage reminded me of the strange coastal lands our Merfolk would find themselves venturing into. And that's it for all of our non-land cards. Now let's take a quick look at the mana base. We're running a total of 35 lands, which includes 8 basic forests and 13 basic islands. Jawari Disruption is a tapped land that doubles as another light counterspell with flavorful art if we don't need the land. Lumbering Falls features one of the breathtaking vistas our explorers could encounter on their travels, provides both of our colors, and can become a 3/3 elemental with hexproof for 4 mana. Seafloor Debris is an absolute flavor win with gorgeous art. This specific Simic Guildgate provides both of our colors and features Merfolk in its art, as well as a quote from Zagana herself in the flavor text. Svael Unite Temple features perfect flavor and great art and can put us forward 1 mana for a turn at the cost of sacrificing the land. Both the Thriving Grove and the Thriving Isle will tap for both of our colors and have art that fits perfectly. Unclaimed Territory represents the coastal jungles some of our Merfolk call home, enters untapped, and can give us either blue or green mana as long as it's going towards a Merfolk. Unknown Shores depicts a strange seascape that our explorers may encounter at the farthest places along the edges of the map. Woodland Stream offers both art and flavor text that fit perfectly in the deck. Coral Atoll can help us make an additional land drop by effectively drawing us a card. Hidden Cataract and Hidden Nursery will both let us discover after we explore them, and Halimar Depths helps us manipulate the top of our deck and is the epitome of a flavor win. And that's it! We've sailed our way through all 100 cards of the very first full flavored deck, exploring and discovering as we went. With a final price of only $76.62 on Card Kingdom or $46.22 on TCG Player, an extremely cohesive art theme, and a strong game plan, I'm more than happy with the final product. I hope you feel the same, and I would love to hear about your thoughts, suggestions, or even experiences if I've made an interesting enough deck to catch your attention and tempt you to try it yourself. So please, if you have anything to say, let it flow in the comments down below. I'd be happy to see it. As one final note, I would also like to thank this community. I've been completely blown away with the reception of my simple introduction video. Even though it's been up for less than 2 days as I record this, I've already received quite a few comments expressing interest and excitement at my vision for this channel, and even giving suggestions for future videos. I struggle to express how much that engagement means, and how much it drives me to produce the best content that I can for you all. I truly hope that I was able to meet the excitement that you expressed, and I want you to know that I've been inspired by the support that I've already received. So thank you to everyone who has already shown support, and everyone who will show support in the future. Until next time, this has been Full Flavor.